So now let's shift right to the next session. Let's shift the focus to compliance for business success. We now have Julius Düvel from Grey Swan, who will highlight how businesses can achieve effective compliance and why it's crucial for businesses. Mr. Düvel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to meet you. Before I jump in, I will hopefully share my screen successfully. I brought a small presentation today and should be visible now. So once again, thank you for the introduction. Excited to meet you all. Today, I will be talking about the growing importance of compliance and how it can lead to business success, especially in the areas of data protection and IT security. Currently, various regulations and rules are coming into effect. So we are living through turbulent times, and staying compliant is critical for any organization, any company that wants to remain competitive in today's evolving business landscape. Before I jump into today's content, I have prepared a quick overview on what will be covered in the next few minutes. First of all, introduction to Grey Swan, the organization I represent today. We'll look at the rise in regulations and supervision. Then we'll explore some examples of how businesses in the financial sector have handled compliance and data protection. And finally, a brief strategy from our side with some practical steps to potentially improve an organization's resilience. Let's dive into the first point. Grey Swan. We are an independent Swiss think tank that advises companies on complex challenges. We focus on areas like compliance, risk management, technology management, and also financial management, and work with companies and clients across Europe and also Central Asia, where we offer solutions to help our clients stay ahead of regulations and most importantly, stay resilient to all the changes of global scale. Collaborating with our security partner, SSE from Berlin, Germany, we also identify security gaps and protect businesses from digital threats, supporting industries like the finance, education sector, or the public sector to stay safe. Some words on my behalf, keeping it rather short. Julius Düvel, my name. My focus in the past couple of years has been program management, but also with a strong linkage to risk management and compliance management, where I was able to support projects including special 44 audit remediation programs, risk strategy development, and also core banking development projects. But now jumping into today's content and laying the ground for what's to come, we see currently that the world is shifting into political blocks. For example, G7 or the BRICS plus states, where additional countries were added over the past couple of years, while businesses are facing more challenges. Through the formation of these blocks, there is an isolation of power, economic landscapes, and also most importantly, technological innovation. Internally, such blocks are aligning close, but from the outside, they are oftentimes threatened, leading to distrust, fear, aggression, and in bad cases, also to attacks. Some regions are adopting those technologies, for example, real-time payments, faster. But in our case, Europe is lagging behind. So we're becoming less competitive, not only in a technological perspective, but also from IT infrastructure, from the IT infrastructure perspective. At the same time, for example, quantum computing is becoming an increasing threat, and this will break our current encryption methods. However, no one knows currently exactly when. So concluding this can be seen for us as a wake-up call, both from a technological but also from a regulatory perspective. Not following the rules, as seen on this slide, can be expensive and also damaging, with three major examples. For example, Wirecard's collapse due to governance and oversight failures led to reforms in Germany's financial regulation. FTX went bankrupt because of poor risk management, also leading to stricter regulations. And lastly, SCB in Vietnam, where billions were stolen through shell companies, showing how weak compliance can not only destroy trust, but also stability and reputation on a bigger scale. And when we look at the regulatory landscape around data in Europe, this continues to grow, especially in the areas of data security and privacy. There are increasing requirements in the European economy. After an initial focus on GDPR, we now see that regulations like DORA, which comes into effect quite short in January 2025 already, or the AI Act in August of next year, and NIS2, which actually becomes applicable in just 1 week on October 17th, we see huge changes. And looking ahead, the CRA, the Cyber Resilience Act, is expected around 2026 or early 2027. And Europe may be behind in technological adoption. It is definitely leading in terms of regulation. Globally, the importance of cybersecurity and privacy is growing. And as this map clearly shows, 77% of countries now have both cybersecurity and data protection laws in place. So compliance is no longer an option, it's an essential for any business that operates on a global scale, and staying compliant at the same time is crucial. Again, as I mentioned earlier, to build trust, to remain trustful, and also to avoid any kind of penalty. Looking into data regulation specifically, Europe is leading the way, targeting 3 main objectives, as you can see here from left to right, where data usage, data security, and data sovereignty are the 3 main objectives. The goal here is to establish a secure, sovereign, and also a user-friendly data economy that protects individual rights for European consumers, businesses, and also public institutions. This works best if the world follows, and this is known as a Brussels effect, where Europe basically paves the way and adheres to other countries following Europe. To highlight just a few regulations, firstly, the DMA, the Digital Markets Act, which aims to ensure fair competition by regulating large digital platforms. The Digital Services Act, DSA, that increases accountability for online platforms and ensures illegal content is removed. The GDPR, which remains the global gold standard, if we can call it that way, for privacy protection. And as mentioned also earlier, the DORA and the CRA, the Cyber Resilience Act, where businesses are aimed to be protected from cyber threats. Moving on, as mentioned, I brought some examples from the financial and from the financial sector and from data protection. I will now showcase some of them, and it continues to be one of the most targeted sectors by cyber criminals, the financial sector. On the right-hand side of the chart, we can see that the increasing number of attacks across different sectors, with finance, healthcare, and energy among the most affected. On the left side, we see the regulatory response, particularly around IT resilience, where NIS1, which is currently in place, is being replaced by NIS2 exactly in 1 week, which significantly increases the scope again. XITE, for instance, will be replaced by DORA beginning of next year, which focuses on enhancing the resilience of financial entities. Here, however, MRISK and MRGO will remain in place. As for the general objectives, NIS2 aims to improve cybersecurity in new sectors, while DORA adds new requirements for financial institutions and third-party providers. The German implementation, or the German way of implementation, will lead to a double regulation for the financial sector, but DORA eventually will remain the primary regulation for the supervised organizations. DORA, which again, Digital Operational Resilience Act, is a game changer, or can be seen as a game changer for Europe's financial institutions. It regulates a total of 21 types of entities, 20 financial institution types, and so-called ICT third-party service providers, which are essentially the IT suppliers for those financial entities. It is entirely new for those ICT providers to be supervised by financial regulators for their IT systems. The larger players will manage this transition, but many smaller ICT providers are affected to the extensive oversight and will most likely struggle. Some, like those currently covered by XITE or MIX, are already well experienced with financial and IT regulation. However, this doesn't go for all of the entities. Looking at the reach of DORA and what it actually brings along, around 22,000 financial institutions and 15,000 IT service providers in Europe will be regulated by DORA. While specific figures for individual countries have not been released yet, we know that approximately 15,000 ICT providers and around 8,700 will be directly impacted by DORA, while only 6,300 will not. These non-supervised providers still serve to 22,000 financial institutions. So the main question that evolves, what will the market decide? Will a bank choose a DORA-supervised provider or one that isn't supervised? So ICT providers should carefully consider whether they want to opt in to being supervised under DORA or not. When we compare data protection laws on a global scale, we see that many countries are adopting GDPR-like rules. However, through our projects, especially in the Central Asian region, we've seen that data protection laws are not well developed. This is also one of the main reasons why companies like Google or Apple still struggle to establish their operations in the Central Asian regions. Two examples I want to point out, or positive standouts, are India and Switzerland. The Indian law, for example, although it's not fully enforced yet, has two USPs. It is written in the feminine form, and it includes explanations within those articles, making the legal text way more easy to understand. Similar to Switzerland, the Indian law is heavily influenced by the GDPR. Switzerland's new data protection law is considered by many to be an improved version even of GDPR. And my colleague Waldemar Guzin, who is also a member of Bitkom, gave a presentation on this in June. And I'll keep it brief here. The Swiss law is often seen as the better GDPR. And on the next slide, you'll see why. So looking at the Swiss and the EU data protection laws, and to compare these, we see some significant differences that highlight the advantages of the Swiss approach. For example, in Switzerland, companies are only required to maintain a processing directory if they have more than 250 employees, whereas in the EU, all organizations need to maintain one. In Switzerland, appointing a data protection officer is voluntarily, but when appointed, there are incentives for conducting DPIAs, so data protection impact assessments. In contrast, Germany requires a DPO for organizations with more than 20 employees, although there are currently discussions whether this level should be raised to 50. Another key difference is around consent. In the European Union, consent is often not fully compliant with supervisory requirements, while in Switzerland, it's not needed unless there is a violation of personal rights. These three differences alone make it clear that Switzerland offers advantages for businesses and consumers, and in turn proving that good regulation may indeed support business environments. As mentioned, my colleague Waldemar Guzin gave a presentation in June, and I'm happy to connect you with him and also to share latest white papers, which we've published around this topic. With increasing regulation, there is also an increased need for audits and certifications. Supervisory authorities are conducting more audits and including special audits, for example, special 44 audits or the introduction with DORA. There will also be an increased number of entities that will be supervised and also audited. At the same time, self-audits like those for ISO 27001 certifications are also globally on the rise. And as you can see here, it's interestingly China, which is leading in the number of these certifications by far. Just to point out one more number, among the Eurostoxx 50 companies, 37 hold an ISO 27001 certification. While IT or secure IT may not be the direct cause for success, there is most certainly a correlation. So secure IT often means newer, more powerful IT systems along with a better governance, with a better organized structure, which in turn improves the competitiveness. And coming to the strategy, to wrap it up, and as mentioned before, we've prepared some practical steps for improving a company's resilience. First of all, risk audits. Financial institutions should conduct independent audits to review their risk assessments and to ensure independent evaluations. Next would be market analysis, the analysis of the financial landscape to identify strategic options for the organization company to remain resilient. Thirdly, maturity reviews, an assessment of the internal governance, resources, IT security capabilities to ensure readiness for regulatory requirements and potential changes. Supplier compliance is a fourth step, including a review of suppliers to ensure they comply with new security regulations, for example, especially under DORA. And lastly, strategic preparedness, adaptation of business strategies to respond to increasing demands for security and compliance across regions and industries. And now I already want to thank you. And if you have any questions, topics you'd like to discuss, feel free to drop them in the chat or reach out to myself or one of my expert colleagues, Dr. Waldemar Guzin, as I mentioned already, or Nadine Hoffmann.
Thank you very much, Julius Düvel, for these practical insights. We, at the moment, don't have any questions, but feel free to ask questions in the chat. I think you will be free to answer them in the chat. So thank you very much once again, and have a great afternoon.